The ultimatum. The Korvax ships appeared in Earth's orbit without warning or preamble. One moment, the orbital monitoring stations were tracking the usual array of satellites, space junk, and the occasional meteoroid. The next, 73 massive vessels hung in the void, their hulls gleaming with an iridescent sheen that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Commander Elena Reyes stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiant, Earth's most advanced warship, and felt her mouth go dry. The ship's AI had already calculated the firepower of the alien armada. The numbers weren't promising. "Open a channel," she ordered, her voice steadier than she felt. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a humanoid figure with pale blue skin stretched taut over an elongated skull. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed across its face in complex rhythms. "I am Commander Elena Reyes of the Earth Space Force. You have entered Earth's sovereign space without authorization. State your intentions." The alien's mouth didn't move, but words echoed through the bridge speakers. "We are the Korvax Collective. Your world has been selected for resource extraction. Your technology level has been assessed as primitive. Your military capability has been measured as negligible. You will surrender all planetary governance to Korvax authority within one planetary rotation." Elena's knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of her console. "And if we refuse?" The alien's bioluminescent patterns flashed faster. "Refusal is illogical. The Korvax Collective has never been defeated in 17,000 cycles. We have harvested 412 worlds. Your species will be preserved as a labor force if you comply. Resistance will result in extinction." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving only the image of the alien fleet hanging in silence above the Earth. "Well," said Lieutenant Commander Raj Patel from the tactical station, "they certainly don't lack confidence." Elena turned to face her crew. 20 men and women representing the best Earth had to offer. Their expressions ranged from shock to fear to anger. "Send the recording to Earth Command. Then get me everything we have on those ships. Weapons capabilities, shield strengths, propulsion systems. I want to know what we're up against." "Commander," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving reports from all over the globe. They've broadcast the same message to every major government and military installation on Earth." The next 8 hours passed in a blur of activity. Every nation on Earth mobilized its military forces. Ancient rivalries were temporarily set aside in the face of extinction. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session, and for once, there was no posturing or political maneuvering. Elena found herself in a secure bunker beneath Geneva alongside the top military leaders from around the world. The mood was grim. "Their technology is at least a century beyond ours," General Zhang of the Chinese Space Force explained, pointing to the holographic display of one of the Korvax vessels. "Their energy signatures suggest weapons we can barely comprehend, let alone counter. They've made no attempt to jam our communications or disable our satellites," added Admiral Williams of the U.S. Space Force. "They don't consider us enough of a threat to bother." "Then that's their first mistake," Elena said, stepping forward. All eyes turned to her. "They've judged us by our technology, not by who we are. Throughout human history, technologically superior forces have been defeated by opponents they underestimated." She gestured to the displays showing the Korvax fleet. "They're overconfident. Their formations are textbook perfect but predictable. There are no scouts, no screening vessels. They expect us to either surrender or launch a frontal assault that they can easily repel." "What are you suggesting, Commander?" asked the Secretary General. "We give them something they don't expect. Humanity has been fighting wars against ourselves for millennia. We've learned to be adaptable, unconventional, and ruthless when necessary. The Korvax may have superior technology, but they lack imagination." For the next 12 hours, the most brilliant military minds on Earth worked feverishly to develop a strategy. Scientists and engineers modified existing weapons systems. Hackers probed for any vulnerability in Korvax communications, and deep beneath the lunar surface, in a facility whose existence was known to fewer than 50 people, A project codenamed Prometheus was activated. Alina returned to the Defiant with a new mission. Her ship would not be part of the main Earth defense fleet. Instead, it would perform a far more dangerous role. As the deadline approached, President Chen of the United Earth Government addressed the planet. Today, we face the greatest threat in human history. The Korvax Collective believes we will meekly submit to enslavement or annihilation. They are about to learn that humanity does not bow to threats. We have faced extinction before, from ice ages, plagues, and our own folly. Each time, we have survived and emerged stronger. We will not surrender our world. We will not surrender our future, and we will show these invaders that the human spirit cannot be measured by the technology we possess. The speech was still echoing across the world when the Korvax fleet began to move. Just as Alina had predicted, they maintained a perfect formation as they descended into the atmosphere, a display of power meant to awe and intimidate. Aboard the ESS Defiant, Alina watched the primary Korvax vessel, a behemoth twice the size of the others, take position above the Atlantic Ocean. "Status of Operation Trojan?" she asked. Lieutenant Commander Patel nodded. "Ready, Commander. Transponder signal modified. As far as their sensors are concerned, we're one of them. And the package? Armed and ready. The moment we're within their shield perimeter, it will activate." Alina took a deep breath. "Take us in, Lieutenant. Nice and steady. We're just another Korvax ship adjusting position." The Defiant moved smoothly toward the massive Korvax command vessel, its hull signature disguised by experimental technology that made it register as one of their smaller support craft. It was a desperate gamble, but if it worked. "They're scanning us," Paddle reported, tension evident in his voice. "Hold course," Alina ordered. "All crews prepare for potential immediate engagement." The bridge fell silent as the Defiant drifted closer to the alien flagship. 1,000 kilometers. 500. 200. "We're inside their shield perimeter," Patel whispered. Alina allowed herself a small smile. "Activate the package." Across Earth's surface, millions watched the skies and waited for either salvation or doom. The Korvax ultimatum had expired, and their ships had taken position over major cities and strategic locations worldwide. The aliens' confidence was absolute. After 17,000 cycles of unbroken conquest, why would Earth be any different? They were about to find out. The counterattack. Deep within the Korvax command vessel, something impossible happened. A tiny device, smuggled aboard by the Defiant's deception, activated. It contained no explosive, no conventional weapon. Instead, it released something the Korvax had never encountered before, a highly advanced computer virus, designed specifically to exploit weaknesses in their operating systems that Earth's best hackers had identified during the brief contact. For 3 crucial seconds, the Korvax command ship's central network faltered. Shield generators flickered, weapon systems rebooted, and in that brief window of vulnerability, Earth struck back. From hidden silos and submarine launch platforms, thousands of missiles streaked skyward. Most were conventional weapons that the Korvax could easily intercept, but they weren't meant to cause damage. They were meant to cause confusion, to flood Korvax defense systems with targets. Meanwhile, 6 experimental electromagnetic pulse satellites that had been disguised as weather stations suddenly powered up, directing concentrated beams at key Korvax vessels whose shields had momentarily weakened. Aboard the Defiant, Alina watched her tactical display as chaos erupted throughout the Korvax fleet. Phase 1 complete, she reported to Earth Command. Initiating Phase 2. The Defiant suddenly accelerated, its engines pushed beyond safety limits as it aimed for the gap in the command ship's shields. Behind it trailed a suite of specialized drones, each carrying a payload designed by Earth's finest minds working in desperate collaboration. "They're recovering faster than expected," Patel warned. "Shield regeneration at 60% and climbing." "Deploy the drones," Alina ordered. The drones shot forward, each targeting a specific vulnerability on the Korvax vessel. They weren't trying to destroy it. That would be impossible with Earth's current technology. Instead, they focused on communication arrays, sensor nodes, and propulsion systems. Across Earth, the response continued. What the Korvax had dismissed as primitive technology was being used in ways they had never anticipated. Chinese quantum computers launched sophisticated attacks on Korvax navigation systems. Russian EMP weapons, designed for a war that never came, found new purpose against alien electronics. American drone swarms, nearly invisible to Korvax sensors, attached themselves to hull plates and began cutting through using modified mining lasers. The devices couldn't generate enough power to serve as weapons themselves, but they could momentarily amplify Earth's gravity in localized areas. When targeted precisely at the already damaged Korvax ships, the effect was devastating. Vessels designed for the vacuum of space suddenly experienced crushing gravitational forces that their structures weren't designed to withstand. In orbit above North America, 3 Korvax ships crumpled inward like aluminum cans crushed in a giant's fist. Their crews never had time to understand what was happening to them. On the Korvax command vessel, Supreme Director Zolvex watched in disbelief as his perfect formation disintegrated into chaos. "Impossible," he hissed, his bioluminescent patterns flashing in agitation. "These primitives cannot possess such capabilities." "Director," his second reported, "the humans are not using a coherent military strategy. Each group appears to be attacking independently, using different methods. We cannot predict their movements." "They are uncoordinated," Zolvex snapped. "That is weakness, not strength. Nevertheless, we have lost 17 vessels. Our communication network is compromised, and our sensors detect unusual energy signatures approaching from their moon." For the first time in his long life, Zolvex felt uncertainty. The collective had conquered hundreds of worlds, but always using the same methodical approach. Arrive, demonstrate overwhelming force, demand surrender, crush any organized resistance. Species either fought conventionally and lost, or surrendered immediately. The humans were doing neither. They were fighting like cornered animals, with desperation and creativity that the highly structured Korvax military doctrine had no answer for. "Director," his second interrupted his thoughts, "the primitive vessel that penetrated our shields. It's on a collision course with our primary reactor chamber." Aboard the Defiant, Alina looked at her crew one last time. "It's been an honor serving with you all," she said quietly. "Lieutenant Patel, initiate the final sequence." Patel's fingers moved across his console. Reactor overload initiated. 2 minutes to critical mass. Elena opened a channel to Earth Command. "This is Commander Reyes. The package is delivered. I repeat, the package is delivered. Defiant out." She closed the channel before anyone could respond. There was nothing more to say. The Defiant's fusion reactor had been modified to create a cascading reaction when overloaded. The explosion wouldn't be nuclear, it would be something far stranger. The reactor would briefly generate an artificial quantum singularity, a miniature black hole that would collapse almost instantly, but not before it tore apart anything within half a kilometer, including the Korvax command ship's reactor backslash. On Earth, military commanders watched their displays as the Defiant disappeared into the heart of the alien flagship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a strange, perfect sphere of darkness appeared where both ships had been. It lasted less than a second before collapsing in on itself with a flash of radiation that momentarily blinded every sensor pointed at it. When visibility returned, the Korvax command ship was gone. In its place was a slowly expanding cloud of debris. The effect on the remaining Korvax fleet was immediate and dramatic. With their command structure destroyed and their perfect formation shattered, the ships began to withdraw, pulling back to higher orbits where they regrouped in a defensive posture. 3 hours later, a transmission reached Earth's military headquarters. The bioluminescent patterns of the new Korvax speaker were subdued, almost dim. "The Korvax Collective acknowledges the combat capabilities of Earth forces. We propose an immediate cessation of hostilities and withdrawal from your system, in exchange for safe passage." President Chen looked around the war room at the haggard faces of Earth's military leadership before responding. "We accept your withdrawal, but know this. Should you or any other hostile force return to our world, you will receive the same welcome. Humanity defends its own." As the remains of the Korvax fleet departed, celebrations erupted across the planet. But in military headquarters and government offices, the mood was more somber. Victory had come at a terrible cost. Thousands of military personnel had died in the desperate attacks. Dozens of cities had suffered damage from Korvax weapons, and the crew of the Defiant had made the ultimate sacrifice. 1 month later, at a memorial ceremony in Geneva, a new monument was unveiled, a simple obelisk of black granite with the names of those who had fallen defending Earth. At the top, in slightly larger letters, was inscribed, "Commander Elena Reyes, ESS Defiant." President Chen addressed the assembled crowd and the billions watching worldwide. "The Korvax Collective believed their fleet was unbeatable. They judged us by our technology, not by our spirit. They counted their 17,000 cycles of conquest and thought we would be just another statistic. They were wrong." She paused, looking at the faces of the families who had lost loved ones. "Humanity has always faced challenges that seemed insurmountable. We have always found a way to overcome them, not because we are stronger or faster or more advanced than our adversaries, but because we refuse to accept defeat. Because we are adaptable, innovative, and willing to sacrifice for each other and for future generations." She placed her hand on the cold stone of the monument. "The Korvax will tell others about Earth now. They will spread the word that this small blue planet is not to be threatened. And perhaps in time, other species will come to us not as conquerors but as equals, as friends. Until then, we will continue to do what humanity has always done. We will rebuild, we will remember, and we will reach for the stars not with weapons, but with hope." As night fell over Geneva, lights illuminated the monument, casting a glow that seemed to reach toward the heavens. A beacon and a warning to any who might look down upon the third planet from an unremarkable star and think its inhabitants easy prey. They would learn, as the Korvax had learned, that humanity's strength had never been in its technology, but in its indomitable will to survive, to protect its own, and to prevail against any odds.